title of the class, by the way, is Who Controls Our Stories? So who controls our stories? Our stories control our brain. So I think about, and I have a picture at the end of just Google searching, and there's someone almost like horse riding the brain. And so this whole notion is, who's horse riding your brain, right? Like, how is that happening? Like which way does it go? And so that connection between stories and our brain, and we were just talking before we came in. I think about our thoughts drive what we say, and what we say drives what we do, right? You know, the whole say, do gaps and whatnot. And so our thoughts drive what we say, and then what we say ends up driving what we do. And we're often not aware of what's happening in our own heads. And we're not aware of how our thoughts are actually a series of accumulated stories. It's a series of visuals and stories and little movie clips that we've chosen to personalize and pick. And the reason this is an important topic is that there's a term in psychology called an internal locus of control versus an external locus of control. External locus of control is in situations where it's really not in your control. It's the outside factors that drive what happens. Oftentimes when you think of a baby, especially a toddler, right? I mean, their internal locus of control is very limited. Almost everything due even to their survival is dependent on an external locus of control. And yet, once you become an adult,
they are truly helpless, basically, right?
Yeah.
Babies are truly
I mean,
helpless.
truly
when
helpless,
they're infants,
right?
literally can't do anything.
But still, they can poop, they can choose to cry. I mean, those are
Can't
things
change
in
the
their control.
diaper. Yes.
But there's this notion of understanding that we cross a threshold where it moves from external locus of control to the dominant majority of what happens in our lives is actually our own control. It's like, it's an internal locus of control, but we can,
narrate it
in a very masterful, blind spot savvy way, narrate that, you know what, that everything in my life is not in my control, right? My boss, my organization, the president, the whatever it might be. We go off this list. And so we've spent time before talking about fears and frustrations and getting bumped. And that notion of when you're bumped, it's simply what is the majority that's already there just spilling out. Whatever's inside you is spilling out, but we like to put it and blame, right? The external item that bumped you, right? Whether it's your child, whether it's a boss, whether it's a colleague, whether it's an email, right? Like, that's the reason why. And what we fail to see and what we fail to build awareness on is no, it's actually what's inside me, but what's inside me now, this information age, are our thoughts. And our thoughts are made up of accumulated stories, and they do accumulate, right? So it's almost like if you think of a movie or a book, it's like chapters and chapters and phrases accumulated, and the sum total of that accumulation, whatever's strongest, is what's showing up in our thoughts, which then results in what we say, which eventually leads to what we do. Now, that's the pathway. It doesn't quite work that way because we've all become masterful poker players. Every single interaction, pretty much the minute we actually interact with human beings, even if it's using the internet, right? Even if it's through social media, the minute we now move from I'm just myself singing in the shower to, oh, someone overheard me. Yeah. Someone, is now listening to my thoughts. The minute we just get social in some way, it doesn't show up from thoughts, say, to do. It moves into this bizarre part where I call tone. Oftentimes the
connection between
the
the
intersection
and what you say
is tone.
Right.
Tone is usually the only way you can really tell the truth of what they're really thinking,
but not
right?
saying. So
or they're saying it, and if you heard just the words typed out, you'd be like, that seems like they're positive, but their tone tells you it's not.
Right.
Or the tone, like,
yeah,
can,
It's like saying,
like the words
it's
can
like,
sound
I'm
negative,
really
but you're,
excited, I'm really excited. I think you can tell the tone, right?
Right.
I mean, obviously it's like a kid doing that, but like to actually act like you're excited when you're not,
Mhm.
you can tell it in somebody's tone, their demeanor, right? I mean, it's like,
Right.
it's obvious to the
Or-
other person. I think it's probably, they know it's happening, but they're trying to act like, right?
and it gets
They're
very
overly
nuanced and
excited.
very subtle. You could even say, I'm angry, right? And there's someone, if you hear those words, you're like, oh my God, they're out of control.
Yeah.
But based on the tone, you're saying, no, I think they're in control.
Yeah,
I think there's a fierceness in it. And so this notion of tone and then skips many steps and often shows up in action. And we kind of move, instead of actually seeing thoughts, instead of actually even seeing what they would say based on thoughts and then seeing what they do, we often just see tone and then we see action. And oftentimes there's even inaction. And so it's kind of interesting, and this is why it's leadership in practice. In theory, it's like the thoughts go to the say, go to the do. The reality of what we see is tone, and then we see action. And we have to now unpack this. It gets very difficult
tone to action.
because when you repeat what someone says, well, the words seem innocuous, seem certain, but it's not. And so there's a big game there. So
Mhm.
this is a topic we're gonna go into, which I thought was interesting, and let me just share my screen. Second, so much stuff everywhere.
Storytelling. Yeah, we're gonna talk about storytelling. And if you weren't here last week, we're gonna recap pieces of last week, right? The mental stack. Oh yeah, this is. a
Yeah,
good one.
so I started with this. I just saw this image, right? When someone's like, what a year. It's like,
It's only-
and by the way,
Still
we're still in January, right? We have,
It's one more day,
about
one more day.
today and tomorrow, right? So effectively a day and a half or almost 2 days,
True.
depending on how you
See
look
how
at it.
quickly you did
right?
that? I was like,
Yeah.
we have one more day,
One
but
more
you're
day.
right.
I'm
So
like,
we still have
I
a full
still-
day ahead of us. Technically.
Today's still early. Most people say it's already over, but it's not. Even if you're in London, there's a lot of hours in the night. But yeah, it's only January, right? And I look at that as the beginning of the race. The beginning of, like, whenever you start a project, it's like, wow, I got a lot of time.
Yeah.
Like, we can act like, oh my God, like I don't have time, it's over. No, it's just the beginning.
I've been saying I've had enough of today already.
Hopefully not the class, but.
Yeah.
But no, this point of like, it's the beginning. And the beginning is where it's so exciting because there's so many possibilities. But have you already narrated, it's the end, right? And so as a result of it, you've confined yourself of the possibilities and all the changes you could do. And the rebirth that we do when we go into New Year's resolutions, right? Most people only realize by March that none of those resolutions are being followed. It's still the beginning. We have a chance to go and do these things.
Yeah.
All that optimism of shedding 2024 and starting 2025, it's still in the starting 2025. And if you happen to be like in the Chinese New Year side, it's like just since yesterday.
Say New Year's Day for
Right?
the Chinese, yeah.
I think so.
Chinese
It's
New Year's
kind of
Day.
like, why are we acting like we've blown the time when I'm like, oh my God, like a lot of time is left. But I feel this is
See,
how we
that's a-
feel.
That's a storytelling technique, right?
Yes.
You just did.
Well, it's also like this notion of awareness, which is
True.
kind of where we'll go into most. Yeah, so by the way, I'm not telling you to watch the documentary. It was just trying to find an image. And your brain, who's in control. It's interesting. There's a lot of amazing people we've spent time with over the years. We're going to hone into one of them a little bit. There's a guy named Simon Sinek who has a great storytelling framework. And so we actually hosted him. I hosted, cohabitated, but there's a language that Kevin uses, is it cohabitated, which sounds
Kevin
weird.
who?
Kevin McCoy uses, but
Oh.
meaning we hosted Simon and his team in an office for 2 years. I mean, they literally worked out of our office. Some people know Simon from his TED Talk, Start With Why. There was Leaders Eat Last. We were actually featured in his TED Talk and Leaders Eat Last on the main stage. But there's a long history, but there's a nuance of it that we want to get into. And once again, a lot of these things translated in practice is slightly different, and that slightly different is massively different to get things right. But one of the other people we spent a lot of time with over the years is Jim Lear, who's written like 19 books. But one of the books was The Power of Story. And one of the insights Jim shares, and these insights are sort of contradictory to each other. First insight he shares is that, look, a lot of people will spend 4.5 years in therapy and try to figure out who to blame, right? Who to blame for all their messed upness and their messed up head. And they spend a lot of time, a lot of money trying to figure that out for 4.5 years. And his point of usually is instead they could have spent 4.5 years trying to change, trying to do something to get better, to rep and train.
Yeah.
And it's not to say don't do therapy. It's just that it's very imbalanced. So there's that one part, but here's the opposing part. Jim Lear in his work and research says that story in our head, right? Who is that driver, that control? And he'll say it's the authority figure in your life. The authority figure is the voice in your head. So whether it was a mother, a father, a grandparent, a coach, a teacher, or now a boss or a mentor, the authority figure. And I do believe there's a time in life where that is true. And when I think about children and they're so impressionable, it makes a huge difference exposing amazing leaders and amazing adults to young children because you're training and shaping that voice. But coming back to his first thing of 4.5 years in therapy, trying to figure out which authority figure are you trying to blame for all your life's woes, all the troubles. At some point, will you wake up, stop being a baby? Because you no longer are the helpless baby. You get to control that story in your head. You are the author of those stories, and you can actually tell the stories that you need. And one of them is not to go and figure out a way to blame somebody going back. And we do this over and over again. And that is the reason why I'm so messed up. I'm like, no, you're messed up because you are accumulating reps and reps and reps of that story that is giving up your internal locus of control to some fictitious. And I say fictitious because it's often highly distorted the more we tell it, and we become more and more helpless. And so it's just fascinating work, but we're going to dive into this component of story, accumulated story, and there's many frameworks and many nuances in it. So we're going to try to dive into a specific portion of it tied to Simon's discovery himself of what he calls the why. Why do you do something, and the breakdown of that. So that's the point of the class. There's a tweet that we shared. We're hosting a pretty big thing next week. Besides the Leadership Academy, we're hosting like 20-something schools, big universities. So it's like Stanford, Yale, Harvard, University of Illinois, University of Virginia, Cornell, all around the future of AI and education, higher learning, what they're going to do. So the heads of AI, technology, CIOs are all coming to kind of brainstorm a next jump, like what this is. And we're going to, on first Thursday, which is next Thursday, some of them will speak on a panel and talk about this while they take questions. And then our team is doing a cool experiment, which we had a very lively, stressful, highly external narrative bumping discussion last night, where I'm hoping they kind of woke up with a different mindset, which is the mindset to have some fun with this. We want to show this insight that the key to succeeding with technology, with AI, is to understand this insight. Glenn Gaffney, he built the cybersecurity division of the CIA, and spent a lot of time with him, talks about what he learned about AI, and he's made the most investments in AI companies on behalf of the US government more than anyone, more than any venture capital firm, which is pretty cool. But he always said that, the key to winning was understanding that this game is a machine plus human game, or what he called, man and machine working in partnership, not like machine alone, not man alone. That it was the
partnership or
collaborative, symbiotic partnership that makes for strength. And so we're in having these AI, and then we're running an AI hackathon. So it'll be like 200 people like coding with AI to make stuff over the course of the weekend here. So it's going to be just insane week next week because our house gets occupied from Wednesday straight to Sunday afternoon. But I call it our house, but it's our office, which looks like a house. So, but
all that to say, I think Amy, who runs the Cornell hackathons, and tied into why you were bringing anything.
So the thing we're doing with our team, which I'm hoping will be a cool thing our team we attack, is this combination of taking AI combining it with the best of human decision-making, combining it with Michelin chefs. And what can we do to create the most cool culinary experiences? Simply only answering 4 questions. So everyone coming is only answering their ethnicity, they're answering health conditions. So that could be like a positive or negative. Favorite foods they hate. Off of those simple inputs, using AI, generating recipes, generating then collaboration with Michelin chefs, and boom, I have no idea what they're going to create, but I've got some visuals and visions. But I think it's going to be very cool sort of see the discussions of AI in schools, where the future is and how it goes. Then you get to experience food. And we've asked our team, I want us to expose our approach, our highly iterative approach of what we did, and being able to see like these inputs and what it produced and how we iterated, made decisions, how we iterated, and then worked with the chefs and iterated, and then boom, you get to go see it physically manifested in real life. So that's the piece. But I digress all there because this quote came from one of the hackathon briefs that Amy at Cornell sends, which I think Megan picked up and I loved it, that Einstein said that if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. We don't do that, right? We try to spend, I don't know, less than a minute to 2 thinking about the actual problem. Then we spend maybe 50 minutes thinking about everyone's perception of me, right?
True.
And then we try to
That's the
actually
breakdown.
spend a few minutes maybe on a solution and then say, maybe we'll meet again, right?
Yeah.
And this notion of training yourself to spend, 55 out of 60 minutes is like almost all of it, right? How this notion of awareness is king. Awareness is the hardest. It is the key. And when I think of ultimate awareness, are you aware of your thoughts? Are you aware of the stories that you've accumulated? Because whatever is the majority, it's what's driving, right? Like writing your brain to then say whatever you say and then do whatever you do. And if you can't quite decipher it, it's showing up in your tone, and then it's showing up in ultimately what you do. And for most of us, it's freezing and doing nothing, right? Or it's like just doing bare minimum enough to be. And so this notion of how important 55 minutes thinking about the problem, 55 minutes out of 60 gaining awareness. And awareness, self-awareness, situational awareness, there's many levels of awareness. So if I finish the title, at some point titles have to be kind of short. So what we put on the page, who controls our stories control our brain. The finishing thoughts in it was 2 more points. Our brains have 2 main opposing stories, and there's many in between, but there's opposing stories there. It's like an always ongoing battle. Like this is like not even World War III. I think of World War like 150 or whatever. There is a battle going on in every one of our heads, and it's a battle between stories of fear and stories of greed. And in the research, this is to recognize fear is the dominant story. It's twice as strong as greed. So the greed representing what you want. People say, what do you want to do? What's your ambition? What's your life goal? At the end of your life and your tombstone, what do you want? Whatever that, what do you want? The greed, right? And it can be in a long term. It can be, people talk about life, which is like tombstone level thinking. They talk about in 5-year, 10-year. They talk about how about this year, or then there's like this, week, and then there's before January's up, which is some people is 1 day, but for me it's 2 days. Like teasing.
You see the difference between us. It's so true because we have 1 more day.
I got
all day today and tomorrow, so it's 2 days.
I have twice as much time as Megan, right?
But see, that's it. It's crazy because it just seems so silly, but it's very true. You rep that just focus on there's 2 full days.
Yeah.
And I've already thought we have 1 more day, even the way I say one
we
more.
We have a lot
feels
more.
Like only 1 more day, less time, almost creates performance anxiety.
Yeah, we only had breakfast, right? There's a lot more food ahead of us. I measure the clocking of the day that way. Greed, fear. Fear is the flip side, but fear is stronger. And there's a part where always, if you do not understand, and if you do not respect how much more powerful fear stories are and how much more we have in our heads, no matter what you say or do on the side of greed, it is all done under the shoulders of all your fear. And so the example that is probably more appropriate in today's day and age is what we're doing in our brain. We are inventing and creating stuff. Think of an example we used in the last academy was, I want you to think of writing a book, and not a book that you write for yourself, but it's got to be adopted, read, and just, this notion of it's useful to other human beings besides your self-driven, well, I'd like to write a book and I think it's a good book. I'm like, nobody seems to agree. Like, meaning, like, there's a part of writing something meaningful as tested by other human beings who say, wow, like, thank you for writing this book because you made the world better. You made my life better because of your book. And that notion of creating a book, and a book is different than a chapter, a blog post, a tweet, or a thought. It's a book. It's got an arc. It's bigger. It's a project. If you don't like that, it's too complicated. We're using analogies of even cooking a meal.
Oh, yeah, cooking a
right?
meal,
Like suddenly you have I just heard, Kathy, we have a dinner party tonight, which we actually do, but imagine, or Tom, we have one tonight and, all the chefs are gone. You have to cook, right? Like, I mean, you're instant, think about all the thoughts. Who, what dietary
Yeah.
restrictions, what are they like? What do we have? And the idea of like in that place, like creating, as opposed to, oh my God, that's it. My life is ending. And kind of like, I can't believe everyone's gonna be so pissed at me. I don't have the supplies. It's a disaster. We need to order pizza, but then no one likes pizza. It's not like, blah, like this notion of recognizing the stories, by the way, matter when you're trying to do something, which is what we call mission, right? Like we are good in this exercise when we're on vacation, right? I can talk about my fear and put it in check as I sip my margarita.
Because you're
right?
not in the game.
And
right?
then they're
You're not in
saying,
the
but
game.
what would you like to do and accomplish? I say, look out at the horizon of the ocean as that nice pina colada comes with the coconut shell, right? For the sixth one, you're like, you know what? I got some big ambitions, right? I want to fix schools.
Yes.
I want to fix my family. Terry's clapping because it's like, that's when you feel just the bravado of the pina colada, like that you have 2 more days of dry January, but decided, you know what? I didn't even know it was spiked. I thought it was just, a mocktail. And they're like, no, sorry, that taste was wrong. Whatever it might be, but like, that's
It's
not,
easy
that-
to dream
that's
and
not
get
the
ambitious.
accurate score,
Right.
right?
It's
Like,
the
meaning-
score of dream and ambition and what you can achieve is when there's stress put on you. We have it tonight. Go. What are you gonna do?
The awareness of my stories on vacation is not a good read. The awareness, right, of the stories that are in my head that matter most is when it shows up on mission. And as the mission gets more stressful, you get the most accurate read of what's in there, right? You get the most accurate read of your just like haystack of fear stories, and then your little bucket of great stories, and the imbalances and what's broken in it is what you'll see in the game of life, which is very stressful. And the higher the stress, you'll see a more accurate score. And then here's the last part, which we're going to dive into. The stories are repped muscles. So here's the interesting part, meaning you, not your authority figure who you want to blame about why you're so messed up, not like some external coworker or whoever emailed you like you want to blame for all your worries. No, it's an internal locus of control that I get to build the muscles of. I get to build my muscles of stories that help me in fear, stories that actually make me want to go do big ambitious things, which is greed. I control repping the muscles. And just like working out, for those of you fitness buffs out there, right? If you want to create muscle, you need to do what they call progressive overload. You need to actually build muscle in putting harder and higher levels of stress. So if you decide that, oof, I need an easier workout, you won't build muscle. It requires stress and the highest level of stress. And those moments are where you rep the muscle of building these stories. And if this makes sense. Higher the fear, right? And you rep the story attempt, that is where you're ripping and building muscle. The harder it is to have ambition, right? Because of whatever reason, maybe you're broke. And so you're like, how could I possibly have ambition to go make any difference in the world? Because I have no money myself. That is the moment you're repping story build, your sort of story building muscles. The harder it is where you're actually doing the harder workout, right?
Yeah.
And building story. And the more you do, right, and you accumulate these muscles, you fully know how to ride that brain of yours, right? Like you're the top, I don't know, horse riding champion or elephant riding champion, whatever you want to do. Like, I mean, you have control. And that control is a very, very powerful tool. And in this day and age, with all the arguments of, what is about the computer? Like, I think it was Laura who had a great quote, which I think she made up, and I tweeted it because it was so good. But it was actually Laura's exact words, and I'll read it because that was so cool. Yeah, everyone's talking about how can we take advantage of AI, but what if you put a whole bunch of non-critical thinking people in front of a tool? They're gonna have a lot of stupid decisions with potentially larger consequences than exist now. This notion that, people are learning to go to AI and ask AI, what should I ask you? It's like, what are the best prompts? It's like, you can tap the entire world of all the information with, a certain degree of accuracy and a lot of made up stuff too. But like, what do you want to try to tell this thing to do?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, why don't you tell me what you want me to do? Right? Like, it's like that. There's a Seinfeld
There's a
movie
Seinfeld
phone,
episode
right?
you guys ever see years ago about the movie phone.
Right,
Probably
like, I don't know
some
if you
at the
remember that
movie, they
episode.
call the movie, why don't you just tell me what movie you want to see?
His
Anyway,
phone
you can
number
look it up.
changes.
I'm sure
We're
if you
saying,
YouTube, Google it, like.
yes, there was a day where like you had to actually call
Call
a
the
phone number to
movie
find out what
theater.
movies are playing.
We're so old, Kathy, we had to call and say,
Yeah.
in Hyannis Cape Cod, where I grew up, what movies are playing in this Duke, whatever.
See, the memory's not accurate because you don't speak to anyone. It's like, press one
Oh, true.
to hear
Right, you're right.
movies in
Actually-
Hyannis, press two,
Right.
and then you press, and then it says, press one
And
if
then
you
it-
want movie times for
And then
the
it went
Gladiator.
by and you
press
weren't
two.
paying attention enough and didn't write it down fast enough, you'd have to listen to the whole thing all over
And
again.
so there's a Seinfeld episode where Kramer's line gets mixed with the movie phone line, so everyone's calling his house instead, right?
So good.
And so he pretends to be the movie phone, and he's like, what movie would you like to see? Press one for, and then of course they're pressing buttons, but he can't tell what they're pressing. So he starts guessing and they're frustrated, they're pressing all kinds of buttons. And eventually he says, well, why don't you just tell me the movie you want to see? And so like the
I like
notion.
Denise saying not old, but seasoned. I'm gonna use that. I'm not old, I'm just seasoned. Seasoned does sound better. Okay, thank you.
So listen to the tone. If you're actually bothered by that comment
I
and you're already
know.
doing that, we
It's a
got a
tell.
problem.
It's a
Yeah.
tell.
Anyway, so
Okay, doesn't
not the
matter.
point. We're gonna go into this.
Okay.
I put a bunch of different things. We've covered some of this stuff. There's a lip class, which I don't remember, but Laura's good at pulling these up on the fly. On the hero's journey, it's a great storytelling framework. It's good, and I liked even this picture because it talks about the unknown and this darkness versus the light. And like it's been like the mother of how all movies are written. They follow this hero's journey framework. So like if you know why you watch certain movies, you're like, wow, I love that movie. It's like, oh, they just read the same framework with different characters,
Yeah.
different situations, same movie though. We love the whole journey there. It's just a framework to tell stories in a way that makes people feel like, wow, like, I want that or live that.
Yeah.
Jim Lear has written a lot of frameworks. We spent time with him and on kind of like the notion of how to think of stories. Start with Why is actually simply a storytelling framework. Dan Ariely, we've like done a lot of work with him as well. And his latest book, Misbelief, it's fascinating. We talked about this quite a bit. He talks about how there are two extreme storytellers that are on opposing sides. One is conspiracy theorists, and the other one are like religious fanatics, right? So for those of you who, please don't get offended, my mom's a pastor of a church, which lets me go into this topic, but I'm not that Christian. So, but in these extremes, he talks about how both are made up. Both are actually made up and narrating, a made up story over and over again. But if you look at the data, conspiracy theorists are very miserable. They're not only miserable to themselves, they're miserable to everyone else around. And so they actually get sick and can actually distrust everyone. And so this notion of it doesn't seem to be, even if it's true or has announced the truth, the best thing to rep and become, versus the other side in religion. Yes, they might be crazy too in their own way, and extreme stories, right? Like everything is done for goodness and it's God and whatnot. But his point is that, but their stories make them do good things. It makes them have greater patience when in pain and suffering. It makes them help other people. It makes them be good Samaritans. It makes them like, have more. So like their stories lead to good things. The other one leads to bad things. And it's saying we can choose. There is no, well, I was raised and I was forced to go to church, which is why I am this way. Or no, I was raised with conspiracy theorist parents, which is why I'm this way. No, at some juncture, you get to choose. And then, yes, it's difficult to change the pathway that you have been on. But if you rep and rep and rep, you build that muscle, you actually get to pick the stories that help you, that are good for you, versus we often keep justifying narrating stories that actually go against our own personal goals, right? Like I want to be healthier, but then I keep narrating stories that make me unhealthier. I want to not have conflict every day, but I keep narrating stories that create conflict every day. I want to, have some hope and build something innovative, but I narrate stories all day long about how every constraint makes it that I have no autonomy and everything is controlled by everybody else but me. You narrate these stories that are not good for us and that make us do the wrong thing, but we act like, well, I can't help what I think, right? That's my thought, right? But then they're like, well, who's driving the thought? Oh, it must be that coach of mine way back that really messed me up. And so I'm just repeating them over and over again in my head. And that's why this point being, like, I'm hoping after this class, you have a little more of a, okay, time to stop being a baby, right? Because a baby does not have control over their stories. They are truly helpless, but it's time to start the process of accumulating stories that help me, that help my situation. So in that vein, I'm going to dive a little deeper because I think the brain and in practice is so complex. There's so many things happening at once. So this is only just one component of a story. And the best way I think about why, not why, but the framework of the start with why storytelling framework, it's a storytelling framework that creates drive, that creates purpose, that creates this, what we call 60-hour rat energy. There's a lib class that Laura will find that has 60-hour rat energy. This notion that when people are motivated, driven, and they're on a mission, right? It's shocking. They surprise themselves at what they figured out. Maybe not in the hour meeting, but they just keep going at it. And there's nothing stopping them. And that source of drive, right? Malcolm Gladwell wrote the book Drive, and everyone's been trying to study what drives people and what motivates people. It's like the big question. Almost every leader I ever talked to wants to spend time talking about, like, oh, how do you find driven people? And then how do you, increase their drive, increase their motivation? Start with why is simply a framework to actually help do that. It's a storytelling framework. I call it playing offense, to play offense. It's not a storytelling framework to play defense, not to deal with the fear part, but it's all about the greed part. So there's nuances in this in practice that we've, by all the time we spent, picked up. So we're going to share that in this class. Shared this last week, this mental stack. This is what we will cover in the Leadership Academy. And what's fascinating, by the way, I kind of annotated on this a little bit, the consistency versus the intensity. And in fact, I might self-correct it right now, real time. Sorry.
It doesn't include the self-driven, right?
And the reason I did this, it's subtle but kind of important, is this notion of self-driven at the bottom is something that you already do really well. And as we dove deeper, we all have different things. Like, Dana's like, a horse enthusiast writing. And no matter what, she's like, you can't talk her off, kind of making all the right decisions, which is like good judgment. Or like Kathy's when it comes to travel, or, Tom when it comes to like travel planning, restaurants, or Greg in escape rooms or fantasy sports. It's amazing, their decision-making, their judgment real time, their ability to pull up the right stories are so rapid, so automatic, and I would say almost perfect.
Yeah.
Like
It's like your
they're
brain
like
is on fire.
perfect brains.
Yeah.
Right? they just manage, even in all situations where the opposite happens. Everything fell apart and everyone's thinking this trip is over. And Kathy's like, you know what? I'm going to fix it and show you guys. And the fire and ability to park that concern, like, it's like, wow, like, that's a good brain, right? That's like, and who drove that? Oh, well, it's because years ago, I think I had an aunt who like loved travel and like, it's not true. Like,
Wrap
don't give credit to the wrong
stories.
person. It's your own brain
Yeah.
wrapping your own stories. But what we found in the self-driven, which you put on the bottom right, is it's a series of two things happening on things you're good at: accumulated story and accumulated routine, and they work hand in hand. The story part is like what you think, right, and say, right? So it's like kind of storytelling.
Yeah.
The routine is the action. And routine is a word for kind of automatic default actions, right?
Yeah.
So it's like kind of these rituals usually, or routines. And these two things work hand in hand, because if you're a person who just likes to say but never do, right? Most people say like, God, get away from this hypocrite, right? But if you only do and never say, they're always like, I have no idea what you're going to do. It's like always a surprise. Like, why can't you, connect the two, right? True authenticity, true integrity is having a very small distance between say and do. Like you say what you do and then you do what you say. Both matter, not just one side. And so the self-driven is like kind of you running as optimally as a high-performing human being as you can imagine. Now you move off that one topic and just all hell breaks loose, right? It goes into my mother diapered me wrong, and then I got yelled at and blah, 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 and the weather was bad today. And so as a result of that, I woke up, not enough sleep, which is why I'm being such a little asshole today. And then breakfast didn't have what I'm like, doesn't happen in your self-driven, but every which way I can find a way to magnify, to do what I would call bad to almost horrible judgment just seems to occur consistently for a lot of people. And to say, wait a sec, so here's the good news. You already are perfect because it shows up in self-driven. So if we were able to break that apart and understand the components, can you retrain your brain to work in that same way, but not on that one thing, which at this point, I'm not even sure how I really got there, but on anything I choose. And the components of how to get there is a interplay of intensity versus consistency. Consistency is the everyday. And so we're breaking these things down. So in this next Leadership Academy, which is the third iteration, we're going to break this down even more, because we're finding that people are walking away so confused. And so there's too much stuff to try to figure out how to do things well in life. So they all walk away with the wrong thing, right?
Yeah.
I just need to lay down more, right? I just need to talk to one person. It's like everyone comes up with the wrong thing. Or it's like, I just need to drink bone broth and then boom, right? Life gets better. I'm like, I don't think so.
I don't mean to hijack the class, but I was just thinking this self-driven piece, because you're gonna get off of this in a second, but just maybe, can I give a quick
Yeah,
example on
please.
it? Just because I had a recent example this week, I was gonna just share, because I thought it might be helpful if, in terms of this self-driven aspect, we've been talking about how if you have that and you have it up, in terms of the environment, your setup, if you have it on your wall, a reminder of you at your best, right? Like, I have mine up on the wall, but I almost don't even have to, well, I should actually look at it more because it would help remind me, but it's basically saying my brain works optimally or perfect or as close to perfect as you can get on this topic. So for me, it's tied to exercise. I don't have excuses. I will find a way. I could be sick, 5 hours sleep, I will find a way. Like that's all the self-driven. So I don't get easily swung. I'm open to feedback. It's like when you're at your best self. So it was so interesting to knowing what that is and refining it and thinking about it and looking at all the stories you tell yourself, all your routines, super helpful. There's an exercise that brought everybody through a few months back and leadership and practice. You guys can take a look at it. Anyways, the other night, this was just such a fascinating example of what I went through. It was like it was crazy how so Charlie and I were working out Tuesday night. I think it was Tuesday night. After a really tough workout, we went into our new sauna, we had the sauna, whatever. We were talking through it. I was trying to work through this hero's journey. So one of the storytelling frameworks, Charlie just mentioned this hero's journey, but there's like a really tough part of it, right? Where you're talking about the down to then get back up. And so it's not like an easy exercise. It's like mental exercise. So I'm trying, right? Going through something really tough and I come out and I can tell Charlie's looking at me like, Like I didn't really go for it. I didn't my narrative was like, I think it was like 9 o'clock. I tried hard enough today. Like literally told myself, I did enough today. Like enough. Like I tried hard, like just in my head, I'm getting into the shower and I was like, I had in my head, my story was, I'm kind of annoyed. I think he doesn't think I'm doing a good enough job of this. I'm not trying hard enough. I think I've tried hard enough, good enough today. I've done enough. As I said that, literally an hour prior, we did our workout. And you know the farmer's carry, because we always hear farmer's carry, you have to be able to carry 75% of your body weight for a minute or a minute and a half. It keeps changing, I feel. After a certain age, you live longer, all that stuff. Add that into our routine months ago. But when we worked out, I did it for almost 30 seconds and I felt it was pathetic. So before we ended, I was like, for the timer.
I did it almost a minute.
He did it almost a minute. Well, yes, that's true. It was 50 seconds, but whatever. So, but I was like, and I had and I'm doing I'm trying to up the whatever, but I'm doing worse than I was even a month ago. So I was so annoyed. I'm like, this is put the timer back on. And he was like, Megan, just kind of we gotta, and I was like, 30 seconds. I just want to get another 30 because then I can say it's a full minute. I know I had to drop it and pick it back up, but I want to finish the rep. So of course I do it despite he's like, we don't have time for this, almost like, what are you doing? So I'm in the shower and I'm thinking, as I literally said, I've done enough today. I was like, I don't say that in terms of exercise. I don't do that. I don't do that. In fact, he was saying, let's go. And I said, 30 seconds. I'm going to try again.
I said a lot more than let's go.
What'd you
I
say?
said,
you're annoying kind of? I think you were annoyed. I forget.
just admit defeat,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yeah.
I said next time.
Yeah, no.
And I said, I'm not even gonna time it, right? And
I was like, that's fine. I'm picking them up and I just started
put the
walking.
weights away.
And my narrative was,
everything-
I'm not gonna walk away from this workout being that weak. I'm not a wimp. That's wimpy. I had I'm being I use different words. So then when I'm in the shower, I'm like, God, I sound so weak. As I heard myself, right, this is the awareness part. I heard myself literally say, I've done enough. Kind of get off my back feeling. And I'm like, that's not how I talk to myself in the workout. That's not what I do. I'm not, that's so weak.
If you were there and video the thing, I would first be mocking her. Then I try to go aggressive, that put the weights away. We don't have time, right?
Yeah.
And
And you're
then-
I'm not timing
and
it.
then
I'm
I
like,
said,
I
I'm
don't
not
care.
even
I'm
gonna
just doing
time
it.
it,
I'm like, I don't, I had I don't care what you're doing.
And
I'm
then,
doing
and
it.
then I went for pleading. I just started pleading that she could hurt herself,
Oh,
that,
you didn't get hurt.
and then I was like, and I'm not even gonna put the clock on so you don't do it. And she's like, I know what part of the song it is, so
I
I'll
know
know how
how
to
long
measure
it
it by
was.
song. I literally,
I
no
know
matter what I did,
number time the song
it was
came on
impossible
and-
to
I
prevent her
did the
from doing
extra
it.
30 seconds. I did
She
the
says
minute.
30, but actually I counted. It was more like 15,
No.
14 and a half.
No, it wasn't.
But see what I mean?
It was- it
It's
started
just
at 47
relentless.
seconds. It got
Relentless,
over
right? Like I said.
But anyway, I think that just as a for instance, if you actually are aware of when your brain is optimal and where you do that, you don't have excuses, all the stuff that is just awesome. When you're doing it in some, and you have a parallel world of stuff you're doing on the work, whatever project you're on, if you can remind yourself how you act, you just realize, shit, what am I doing? Anyway, sorry. So yes.
Yeah,
hijacked,
so-
but go on.
The self-driven is powerful because it will show you where your judgment is strong, where your judgment is good. And because it's self-driven, we often don't realize how rapidly you are narrating a story.
Yeah,
It's so automatic.
so automatic.
It's so automatic in how we narrate a story to park fear. I mean,
Yeah,
this one here is usually worried about getting hurt all the time. And
Yeah.
despite I'm pleading and saying you might get hurt,
yeah,
whatever you said to yourself was so fast, boom, that got
Yeah.
parked.
yeah,
And then whatever you said to want to have that drive and motivation, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
for 14 seconds and a half, it just
Close to a minute.
but- when you round up, years away, but the FF,
So competitive.
which I'll go into, which is around fear. And there's a nuance of why it's FF, not just fear, because in practice it's different than theory. But I think about this notion of hijacking versus opting in. The hijacking is when you actually are no longer in control of your brain, right? You've given up control to your made up external people or terrorists. And all the worst things you can imagine. I was thinking, remember that movie Limitless? Which is you take a pill and you're just amazing decision-making brain power. Whatever would be the opposite of limitless. I don't know what that would be.
Limit.
It's not-
Limit
it's not-
full.
It's not even
Full
limit
of
full,
limits.
but it's
I don't know.
I think something stronger, like that limit full. It's like,
Opposite of limitless sounds.
it's just
Can't think of the
like
word.
tilty spiraling, like,
No good,
just no good.
useless.
Right? It's
useless,
kind of like,
Useless.
that'll be like driving a car and be like, wait, what was that sound? I think my engine fell out. That's what it feels like.
My engine.
The engine just dropped out, like the car is running with no engine, right? Versus VX is opting in, self-driven. I choose to opt in. And as you saw, even with Megan's farmer's carrot, no matter how much I tried and how many different strategies to get her to stop, just wouldn't. And now it's rounded up to 30 seconds, which is now the full minute. And so, I mean, it's like crazy. It's crazy how you can choose to opt in,
That's so interesting.
right?
And the competitiveness, the playfulness, which, anyways.
So
Yeah.
the nuance of the class, so we're not going to talk about everything here, but on the FF, which is what I call defense versus VX is playing offense. I mean, I can't tell you, we talked about last time, the mental chatter class, the single best way to control your anxiety. This is in the research. The single best way to help mental health is to learn how to play offense, self-driven offense, not someone else's project, but finding that inner fire yourself, which is one framework that was one of the best is Simon's Why, which we'll go into. But on the left side, the reason why in practice, it's not just fear. There is fear, and then there's also high frustration. The ability to build a muscle that lets you park it. Meaning, when the game isn't happening, right? So the slide after, this is from all before. This is a slide from Lip 199. And so meaning I'm talking about things right in the middle. There's pre-game, right? There's post-game. So think of like when you're strategizing, making a plan versus when you're reflecting. Versus I'm talking about the score is in the game, okay? So when stuff's happening in the game, that's where it matters. Not like, and I was telling Megan, like your golf handicap from the driving range does not count. Your golf handicap, when you actually just go play alone all the time, should not count either. Because the worst of play shows up when other people are around, right? And you're annoyed that they spoke, said something, maybe they snickered. Like that's true gameplay. Your true score is when you're actually interacting with other human beings, right? Which is why it's not like I'm a great writer when I just write by myself and no one reads my books. No, I want to know how great a writer is after you write it and then you publish it out there and then see what people say. Right? It's how Google search worked, right? How many people reference my work? That was the most important stuff. Like that's all around, footnoting and referencing. But I went to that slide quickly because I just want to make sure the nuance we're talking about is in game, right? So in the game, when fear, which in practice is more fear, or some people it's high frustration or both, right? Are you able to park it so that you can focus on playing offense in the game? Or are the muscles either so weak that you're like, oh my God, it's like a bursting dam and I can't help it. It just goes, wow. It's like a tsunami, it just sweeps right over. Or do you do worse? Do you make it a tsunami, right? I think it's just a wave coming in, it'll just pass by. But instead I narrate tsunami, tsunami, and just boom. Like, are you aware that whatever way it goes, you're unable to park it, right? Unable to park it right now, it probably does not make much difference because if you don't play offense in the game, you're not going to have a chance of winning. Like it's a rep muscle, the parking it. But the goal is to go into the offense, and within the offense, there's many components. I put one of the parking lots, different elements. So this is not the only thing, but I want to touch on the nuance of the why and where in the details people generally get wrong. The why is always made up of two parts. It's never one, but everyone only sees it as one. Most why statements sound like giving back statements. They sound kind of all tied to purpose of helping other people statements. And the formula for why statements, this is like literally from Simon Sinek, is it's to do A so that B. To do A so that B. B is the purpose. And it's what most people remember. But they kind of forget the A. Said another way, A is better me, B is better you. Oxygen mass theory, selfish before selfless. And everyone's like, no, I'm going to be selfless. And then I'm also going to be selfish. No, the order matters, the sequence. The biblical, you fill your cup so that you spill onto others. both matter. Both matter, and the sequence matters a lot. Otherwise, bad things happen. Now, what's interesting is that, and this is some of the interesting discussions when Simon was in our office for 2 years, you can imagine like this guy's like famous TED Talk speaker. Everyone's like, knock, knock. Do you have like 5 minutes, Simon? And so he has all kinds of conversations with our employees. And I remember this one conversation that he was sharing back with me saying, it's a very common error that happens, right? We had a program called Code for a Cause. Code for a Cause, for every engineer, they were allowed to spend, I think it was a day a year, or maybe, I can't remember, it was
I thought it was 2 weeks.
2 weeks? Oh, actually, yeah,
project.
right,
Yeah.
2 week sprints.
2
right?
week sprints, yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, instead of like 20% time, like 2 full weeks, they were allowed to go and dedicate to helping any like cause,
Like
nonprofit of their
yeah.
choice. So like our engineers went and did some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, just went and built them a whole website in 2 weeks, right? And
Yeah.
did all the stuff they just couldn't do, and just would come back like feeling like, wow,
Fire.
my skills and the impact they had.
Yeah.
And so what came back from a lot of them, right? The ones who were in balance was, that's all I want to do, right? And in the conversation with Simon, they're like, that's the most inspired I've ever been. And that's all I want to do. I want to spend my whole life just doing that, right? I just want to spend all my time like helping and coding.
That feels
like,
so good, right?
Forget
Yeah.
about improving your coding skills,
Yeah.
right? Because they'd be out of business now with AI. And forget about like any other stuff of even understanding like any kind of, I just want to give. Very common thing, right?
Yeah.
It's the most fulfilled, most empowered I've ever felt. That's all I want to do.
Like, we're here on planet Earth to do that stuff, right? So like, that's kind of what I want to do.
So not
right?
true.
Not
So
true.
there's a part, you're on planet Earth to do better me and better you.
Okay,
But we always think it's only better you.
yeah, it's like
Right?
the idea of you're here to serve others and help others.
So Simon grilled this person saying, so how do you plan to pay for rent? How do you plan to,
Yeah.
how do you plan to like, upgrade your skills and you need more? Or how do you plan to, pay for food? And how do you like, and they had like frustrated, but like, no, but you're Simon, come on. Like, it's
Yeah.
like I found my purpose, my calling, right?
Right.
And there was this like, and who knows what they went off doing after, but this notion of everyone misunderstands that you need both. Now, we've met some of the top number ones across many, many fields. And what's interesting about VX, we talked about Eden. We talked about that notion of just inner fire that generates that 60-hour rat energy. That can come either from a better you accumulated stories or better me accumulated stories. Said non-jargony, stories that are all about selflessness, helping other people, or stories about being selfish and just becoming amazing yourself. And I was thinking to myself, like, of all the people we met, like when the stories are in balance, which by the way, everyone's stories are in balance, and life's always about getting balance for a split second, but always being imbalanced. But the problem is, if you get too imbalanced, obscure things happen. I would say of all the people I've met a lot of number ones. The people whose inner fire was heavily imbalanced under Better Me is either 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 10, as in like in the elite. Meaning there's very few people that their inner fire was driven from this self-desire to just become the best. I want to be the best artist, the best, it's a pursuit of just excellence from everyone else can figure out what to do with it, but I am just spending my life becoming the best at something.
Like we were saying, like for instance, like Michael Phelps or something, like a swimmer who's just like, I want to be the best swimmer in the world, or I want to be the best breaststroke, or what. That's like somebody who is saying, better me, I just want to be awesome at something.
So I haven't met Michael Phelps, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? And because the media and everything, and even they themselves would twist it, but they're people we have spent time with a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I've seen that, like, it's not to say they had no desire to influence and help other people, but it was a disproportionate imbalance of this obsession of being the best themselves. It was a better me, massively imbalanced story. 4 out of 5, maybe 9 out of 10, I'm not quite sure, but the dominant majority, the stories that created the fire was more better you. Like better you, and I'll give you an example of someone that's interesting. Jim Lira shared this, the times he spent coaching Andre Agassi. And Andre Agassi was interesting because he had 2 careers. In his first career, the guy was a hothead. right? I don't know if you, some of you are old enough to remember. I mean, he would break so many rackets in every match, right? I mean, everything. He was so pissed. And the amount of times he would slam the racket in the court. I mean, he would go through so many rackets in the course of a actual in-game match. Second phase of his career. If you watch the pictures of the videos, so you can't see the actual point. What happened? Did he win the point, lose the point? You couldn't tell by looking at the photos after the shot. He was that calm, that graceful, just a completely changed human being. From the old one where you could tell if he won the shot, because if he did, it's like, ah, let's go. If he lost a shot, breaking rackets, I mean, like, the referee's at fault and this is not fair. I mean, just, right? Like, so I kind of look at it as like one was a baby and the other one became like a really good grown-up human being. It's trainable. And Jim Lear played a huge part in helping him train him. But the biggest part of where he went to in the second act or second career was all around the work he did to help other people. The Agassi Institute and all the stuff. It's some amazing stuff versus before just the pursuit of only being the best. That's what he wanted. Now, that's an extreme example of seeing both in one person. But I have seen amazing people who literally, the drive is built off majority, dominant, imbalanced majority and better me. But most people are imbalanced and more driven, easier driven off of the better you imbalance. So that's generally what I've seen. But here's what happens. I think of better me as a story that you are able to narrate that makes you be highly competent, confident, conviction, but opt in, right? I can do it. The better you side is connected being more from good from within, right? For the purpose of helping others, wanting to make a difference in other people's lives. So it's not just about me. But here's what happens when you don't realize and you get imbalanced. I've met many people, very successful, many people who were heavily imbalanced on better me stories, but very weak or what I would call fake better you. It's good for the books and what they do or the charities they donate and help. But the reality, when you really spend time with them, you're like, wait, that you're not a good person. They're imbalanced from too much better me and not enough better you is you become an asshole. You might be successful, but you become an asshole. Then they're like, well, I'd rather not be an asshole. Well, I'd rather be imbalanced on better you, right? And you ignore better me, you become incompetent. No one will, maybe call that to your face because you seem like, Mother Teresa and so focused on helping other people, but they're like, please, what they really want to often say to you, as they really spend time, is please do everyone a favor and stop, right? Stop trying to help, stop giving advice, just stop. Like, because despite your good intentions, you're not helping. It's like the engineer who keeps saying, I'm going to code for you, but then the site gets more bugs, crashes, has all kinds of issues. Then when they want to update it, like it's so hard to update, right? That like.
Yeah, I remember you have to code for a cause. It just reminded me. I remember some of the engineers would come back saying, because the better you, how much they were giving in helping build these websites for nonprofits and doing all this good work, they would come back saying, I struggled building this widget or that thing, and now I want to learn the skills to help me do that.
Yes.
So next time I can do even better. I want to help even more versus just trying to keep helping with the stored fat or the skills that you already have. Like, and when it's done right, it feeds the better me. Because I felt that, like, for instance, trying to coach my kids on something, they're stressed about a presentation or don't want, struggling with anxiety on a test or whatever it might be, or their psychology. And if I can't help them, it's like, it makes me want to figure out like how to figure it out myself.
If you do it the right way.
Yeah, if you do it the right way.
If you do it the wrong way, here's what it sounds like. My kid's having mental health issues. I need to help them. Let me go find advice that I can lecture at them on.
Yeah.
Right? And so now I am using some medical philosophy and this and that and using this kind of fake tone and fake steps and hope that it makes an impact. The right way is I gotta dog food it myself.
Yeah.
Learn it myself so that it spills over into the better you.
Right.
And you can start even with the better you and then discover your shortcomings to go and build a motivation to build a better me.
Yep.
Over time, right? Minus these rare exceptions of people I've met who, and this I'm talking about when the best of the best, 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 5 means the average individual. It's much smaller that can find consistent, like motivation and 60-hour red energy with a heavily imbalanced better me, most people need both. Most people need both. And you might find when you're stuck that it might be easier narrating the better you side of the story, but you have to be aware that if I don't start to at some point building the better me side of the stories, you will either become incompetent or you will become an asshole. And I hope you realize in our leadership and practice, we do not want to teach classes on how to make people more incompetent or more assholey, right? So this nuance kind of is important. It's subtle enough, but a lot of people always miss it. They always, even in the why statement, only hear the better you side and then focus only on that and realize that it is a laddering effect back and forth. But oftentimes when you're stuck in coming up with your Eden, your VX narratives, it might be easier on better you. And as you build that up, you'll see the imbalance, right? And let it be imbalanced to then go and try to correct and build the stories on the better me. And reps of this, as I said, in-game play, as in there's different tiers of stressfulness, right? We have like self-driven where there's no stress. Then there's easier projects, there's harder and hardest. As you progressively overload into the hardest, you get your true score. Or on the team side, most people tend to be like, I'm easiest in one person than when I go to a small group, but when I go to a large audience that's even including external folks, like that's a lot harder. That's the better score of your gameplay. Meaning, can you in that crowd with other strangers narrate, greed, ambition? Can you narrate 60-hour rat energy? Can you in that environment park your fear? Like that score at the highest level is what you want to get in game. Maybe that's a little too complicated, but I think I only had one slide at the end. Good questions. This is the picture I found first, right? It's kind of writing your own brain, right? And that person is nobody but you, right? And so hopefully that's like just supposed to be you, right? But we tend to be imbalanced on one side. And so we think to ourselves, well, let me try to correct it. And you know what correcting feels like for someone who's imbalanced? It feels like this. And so if you're not feeling like this, you're doing it wrong. We were doing our Pilates class last week.
Yeah.
And the instructor said, like, whatever you're imbalanced in, you have to overcompensate.
Overcorrect?
Overcompensate,
Okay.
same thing.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't overcompensate, you will not find a way to have agility in your skills. And what is nuanced, by the way, I think I put it somewhere. The slide before. Probably everyone missed it. That even covered, I forgot to. On the left is park it. On the right, it's the right story situationally. A lot of people think playing offense is just knowing how to be aggressive. I was like, that's not true. Or a lot of people think it's all about being patient. That's not true either, right? A lot of people think it's all around being tough. I was like, no, not true. A lot of people think it's like, no. The thing with offense that's so much harder than defense is that you're looking and nothing is done, so it's up to you to create. It's like looking at a blank screen or a blank sheet of paper and say, right. It's that up to you. It's fully locus of control internally. And so you need to have the muscles, storytelling muscles, to story up whatever is needed in real time, right? So to be able to assess the situation in real time, which is what we call judgment, right? And then actually apply the right story, which is what we call judgment.
Yeah.
And then either say it and action it, it's called judgment, like that right story situationally. And the reason why you have to train this is because you're so good at doing the red side of the story, the left side under stress doesn't show up. And so the example Jim Lear always taught us was around playing tennis, and everyone sucks at the backhand. And what you have in your story is I suck at the backhand, I suck at the backhand. So that's one way you suck at the backhand. Or somebody's saying, you know what? I kill it in the forehand. I have to win every point in my forehand. I want them to see how good my forehand is. Either way, any decent tennis player will whoop your ass because you can't play the backhand. And so how he trains people is you have to first stop part narrating, I suck at the backhand,
Mhm.
because when you hit the ball, saying the words I suck at the backhand, of course you're gonna hit it badly, right? You're not even trying, right? You've already given up before you even engaged. You have to hit every ball with the backhand, kind of which we tend to do with the forehand. And that sounds like ridiculous, right? I can't hit every ball with the backhand. No, that's the training. Every ball with the backhand. Until the point where hitting at the backhand feels like it can be my automatic. And then you can move to situational hitting. I'm going to hit the ball backhand out or forehand, but I have agility to go either way. So I might still have a stronger forehand, but the agility to be able to, in real time, make that rapid judgment call, to be able to do that, you have to train the backhand. In this case, it's going to feel like I'm hitting every shot with the thing I suck at, right? And so people keep saying, oh, I sound like I'm lying to myself. I don't believe the story. I was like, and so you believe your negative stories are all accurate. I was like, that one somehow seems so accurate to you, but narrating this religious positive story seems so fake to you. But your conspiracy theory story seems so real to you. And then they're like, no, I know it's not. Okay, fine, I'll stop telling I'm like, see, you're not overcompensating, right? Tell me about God and the role that God plays in your life right now, right? They're like, I don't believe in God, but I'm just not going to be a conspiracy theorist. Like, you need to overcompensate to the point where you build proficiency to eventually default automatic, and then you can go in the game and play it optimally. So we're going to cover this in next week's academy because we saw a lot of people struggled in trying to understand how to generate self-drive in things that are not already in your self-driven best. And so we'll talk about the setup of it, which is in the intensity. And we'll go through unique reps in this to help everyone. And we're seeing that it's a storytelling muscle in both the hijacking FF, but also a storytelling muscle in BX. And we're going to break down a nuance using Simon's Y to help drive a better version of it. And then you'll see what it looks like on an everyday basis, which is the consistency side. And the worksheets are slightly different because what you do every day, if you really studied it, is kind of in consistency, it's a little bit faster. So a lot of things are more baked in, but that I won't go into all the nuances. All right, I don't know if anyone has any questions. I can go to a slide. Do not
Of
read
course,
the
I want to
chat.
talk more about
Go
the
ahead.
overcorrecting
No, no, go
people.
ahead.
We don't have,
No, 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 go
and then I
ahead.
also wanted
Sure,
Richard,
sure.
I wanted Richard
Oh,
to
yeah,
kind of share
yeah.
with us what happened. I was.
Oh, yeah. So why don't we do that
You want to do that?
first?
Yeah, Richard, and then I.
And then, so those who have questions, you can put it in the chat. I
Yeah.
may not get a chance to
Yeah.
read it. And Laura, I don't think reads it either, but that's okay.
Yeah,
Everyone.
Richard, I was gonna say, Richard gave a big presentation this past week, so to the Royal Navy, yeah, share with us what happened.
If I can just set the context, just so everybody understands what's happened in the past week and what I've done and how it links to your brilliant presentation today. So last Monday, not this week, week before, there was an email sent out to all of the coaches that support our government coaching scheme. There's about 200 of us. Just asking for one coach to support another government department in their professional development training day that they were hosting. So I went into the fuzzy mind that you guys have described so well. The sort of flipping in between my head of should I do it? It really interests me. It chimes. It goes into Eden. It's a different department. It's different people. It's exciting. And at the same time, then the negativity coming in and the fear and the frustration back and forth for 20 minutes. And then I said, yeah, judgment call. I'll go for it. So there we are. Bang. Sent the email. I'll volunteer. It doesn't mean I'm chosen. By Tuesday, the negativity was coming in. What have I done? What if I get chosen? How am I going to do this? I don't want to look like a dork, or this could implode badly. At that point, I watched Lip 219 from Mike and Greg. That should go in the Lip Hall of Fame. That one, if you have one, Lip 219. If you've not seen it, please go and see it. It is sensational. I looked at that, took some guidance of elements of Mod 4. I've not done Mod 4, but I've took some guidance from that and the iteration exercise. That's the powerful thing here, the iteration exercise. So I took that as, well, let's use this framework. Let's just use this iteration exercise for me to prepare not prepare the brief, but prepare myself so that if I do get chosen, then I put myself in the best possible place and I can try and deal with the fear that was closing in. So I did the first iteration, sheet of paper, covered in lots of opportunity, which was in green, and then the fear and frustration at the bottom. It was absolutely packed. There was hardly any space left. And in the top right corner was the VX, which I had was the briefing opportunity to talk about coaching, which is the passion. Left it half an hour and went back to it and did it again. There was more space left on the page this time. Some of those fears and frustrations had actually turned into opportunities of actually they're not fears and frustrations. They can be turned around. This is opening other gateways, and the sort of more high level strategic thought was getting bigger. So I managed to get more. There were other fears and frustrations that had come in, but fine. So that was at the end of I think that was Wednesday. I did that one, if not Thursday. I slept on it and then went for another 2 more iterations again. Some of these opportunities were growing bigger now, and I'd had sub opportunities because I realized actually presenting here, I could present this to my own team, grow the knowledge of coaching. And more of those frustrations were sort of moving away. The interesting part was I think I got notified on Thursday that I was going to present at this event. So the weekend, didn't really think a great deal about it, which I think meant my mind was quite steady by that stage, in a good way. On Monday, I one of the things was I had some fears and frustrations, which I realised, well, if I just speak to the person organising the event, I can get rid of loads of these and actually put myself in the best possible position. So I spoke to them, and that's when they informed me that the 250 people were invited to the event. There could be that many people, and also that the senior director who was going to brief as part of this, instead of going first and then disappearing, that the senior director was going to brief after me, and therefore that person was also going to listen to elements of my brief to add more pressure. Despite that, I don't think in terms of me spiking or the fears and frustrations coming in, it didn't, because I was well prepared by then. I realized exactly what the mission was. I'll just say that I hadn't done any PowerPoint presentations by this stage. I hadn't scripted anything. I didn't have a handrail. All I had was the clear mission, the number of things that I wanted to achieve, which is to promote coaching for everyone. It's not for the elite. It's not for the executives. Also to prove to myself that I can do this. That was one of the key things as well. So that's where I was. And then on Tuesday, I went and delivered the presentation. Charlie, you asked about feedback. I've sent a polite email today to haste them for the feedback. The feedback goes through their system, which all participants of the audience will fill out forms, and then they will get collated and sent to me. But there were a few things that have already come back. First of all, at the end of the presentation, I did overrun by 3 minutes. So we did, I think I had 3 or 4 questions then. Afterwards, I had another 15 questions that came in via email afterwards. There was loads of chat going on. I was trying to focus on the screen, but this was on Google Share, which I don't normally use. And there were loads of emoticons and things flying across the screen, which I'm not used to on Teams. So that was all going on as I was briefing. And at the end of it, there seemed to be an appreciation by lots of people by just what they were sending on the screen for what I presented that day. Also, I sent a message to the organizer. I had just 2 minutes to chat to her at the start before this event, and she was a really engaging person. I found her very interesting, so I just sent her a message to say thanks for the opportunity, but also for me to learn more. She works in the talent part of HR, and I thought that fascinates me as well. So if she was free, could we meet up? So a week of next Tuesday, not this coming Tuesday, the week after, I'm going to their facility, and we're going to talk. She's going to bring some other people in as well, and I'm going to learn more about what they do and how they do it, especially when it comes into performance talent and professional development. So that's the next iteration of this, as well as me getting all of the feedback, which hopefully will be coming. Sorry, but that's quite a long thing. But this is a big event for me, and I think the crux of it was, yes, the fear and frustration kicks in. It does. I think that's perfectly normal. But when you are absolutely focused, I didn't want to stuff this up. I wanted it to succeed for me, but also I believe in what I was doing and the purpose of this and what this can do. And I should have said one more thing, was that I did find out afterwards that one of the main issues that they have within that department is that they have a sense of, especially for a lot of junior people, is that they feel that coaching is for the elite, for the fast trackers, for the executives. And the feedback that came straight back from the organizer was, thank you for absolutely setting the scene that coaching's for all. And that's what we really wanted our audience to hear. But I didn't know that before the event. So there we go. That was me. That was my journey this week.
That's so awesome.
It's so cool.
It's awesome. No, yeah, no, I like this is so cool. Thanks for sharing. We hadn't heard the detail. We just know you sent us a quick note. I was like, just tell us at lip so that we can even hear it live, as everybody else is hearing it. But I'm just the thing that stood out for me, because we've been talking about this preparedness and how to get, mentally prepared. When you said on Monday, you hadn't even prepared any presentation slides, PowerPoint slides, but you felt more prepared. You knew the mission. You felt clear what you wanted to do. It's not just for the executives. I want to prove to myself I can do this. Like that's a very hard thing to do, right? Because I think most of us will go into, when we're worried, we start planning. It's kind of like the Einstein quote we started with. You start planning the work, the PowerPoint versus
Backwards PowerPoint.
Versus you were getting your head straight. I'm really impressed, because it's like, this is one of the things I struggle with, where it's like the default will be to go into the work, right? But when your mind isn't in the right place, the work just comes out like crap. And the fact that you not waited, but you actually didn't, this is what's awesome, is you didn't
Megan,
prep. You actually got your FF. You were working on your mindset for over a week.
Well, don't forget BX.
FF and BX.
Can I just say that this is what happened on. So I presented on Tuesday, 11 a.m. I was in the office at 7:30 that morning, and that's when I decided that I would base the presentation. I'll simply base it on military 5 W's: who, what, where, when, why, for coaching. So why? Because I realized, why try and put a complex thing on the screen? That's just going to add clutter. That's not me. And we talked last week about being genuine. A complex PowerPoint presentation is not me. 5 W's is me, because that's great. I can easily. I'm not gonna get confused or cluttered. And just put the basics on the screen. Why not?
What's the 5th W?
It's who, what, where, why.
Who, what, when, why. I got. Where is it?
When.
Who, what,
Yeah. Who, what, when.
where,
What, who, what, where, when, and why. Yeah. So I just used that simple framework, and it worked really well. I didn't have to mess about with PowerPoint slides. But that was 4 hours before I did it, and then I just wrote a few. Then wrote just a few handrails.
4 hours before. So the actual presentation with the who, what, where, what, you did that
Tuesday. It's all done Tuesday. But Megan, I didn't need to be stressed. There was no need to be stressed, because I'd already sorted out the mission.
Right. I mean, it's no different than.
Well, you'd already sorted out the mission, but you'd already sorted out your head, which is what got you sorted out with the mission.
I think about today's class, kind of put it together between 8:44 this morning and 9:15 before breakfast.
Yes, because
we talked about it and then made some tweaks. Right.
Arguments last night.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's true. In fact, actually mentioned before we left late last night, shoot, we gotta prepare for lip, and you were like, oh, it's almost like, oh, when are you gonna learn, like, this is not the right mindset to do it in, like, doing it in the wrong mindset just creates crap.
And which is why I love this idea of writing a book or even cooking a meal that you don't know how to do and don't know the ingredients. If you're in the wrong mindset, you're gonna produce crap. And so not only will you be pissed about it because you put the effort and energy, you can never get back.
Yeah.
Everyone else either will react negatively, right? Or will give you your more classic reaction, which is nada.
Yeah.
It's like saying that amount of time that you took in everyone's life, it would have not mattered if it happened or not. That's the worst way to do stuff.
Yeah.
And how much of us, remember all the work with Peter Gordon was all around the cloak of complacency. How much mediocre crap we all produce. And is it worth it? It's better to not even have happened, right? I'd rather you go sleep an extra hour.
Yeah, right. It's
Or
like, why
go
bother?
work out, or I don't know, like, don't even be here. Like, don't take up everyone's time too. And I
Yeah.
wrote down this idea of when you take a shot, this is playing offense, and you do, and it doesn't always work, but when you win, and you produce something great, there's something that always happens. Options and choices show up that did not exist before it happened. You have the ability, and you mentioned like you're, coaching personal passion. You have a meeting now, just based on that one thing that you could have tossed up either way, right? You could have gone the safer route. You could have
Yeah.
been, you could have taken one of our slides and just try to go the safe route and hit play or whatever. You could have done anything, right? That's so easy, generic. You could have pulled one TED Talk speaker's book and given the generic, BS that most people tend to do, right? And what ends up happening is it dies right there, right? Another one of those. And what you did instead is now, not only are all these people engaged, I bet you of the 250 people, they go tell other people.
Yeah.
Before you know it, there's a gazillion conversations you are now part of. They're looking to you for guidance, for ideas, for coaching, leadership even, right? And that opens up that you don't even know. Then
Yeah.
there's like the decision maker who's pulling other people for you to sit down to actually not only learn what they're doing, but for you to maybe get involved. Like,
Yeah.
it's like all of that, you would have never
It's
even
great.
known.
It's so
Or
cool.
doors that could have opened.
Charlie, you mentioned it a few months ago about Q&A, and that was one of the. It's a shame I only got 3 Q&A, but by then I was, I could have answered hundreds of questions. I mean, there was I was on point, completely in the zone, ready to interact with that audience. I think at no point did I worry about the Q&A because I know the stuff. I know
Yeah.
someone that's asking me about coaching for, they if you're neurodiverse, etc. It's like, well, yeah, of course, bang, straight in.
Can I tell you
Brilliant.
maybe a suggestion, Richard? I'll give you that maybe help you to prep for that meeting that'll come up next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Write down all the questions you got.
Yeah.
And there's a page with the questions. Then make another version, which is like maybe after of your answers, just viscerally how you would answer them, or maybe even
So
how
I've already sent them back.
Yeah, and I don't know if you have, but I'm saying upfront, share it with them. Saying,
No, I
The
have.
person he's meeting with.
oh yeah, perfect.
You say with the person
No,
you're
they-
meeting
yeah.
with.
No, all the questions that they sent me afterwards, they've already got the answers. I've sent them all back, so they're going to publish them tomorrow.
I love it. And so this is where what you could also do is go to some of these people one-on-one, email to them first, right? And then meet with them, because usually when you see, these are the questions everyone's asking, it gives them permission to unlock their questions.
Yeah.
And then when they start seeing your answers, they're like, I want to know how you would answer some of my questions.
Yeah.
Before you know it, whether it is at a broad level, right? Because if they publish this, you might end up getting like 200 more questions, which is great, right? And if you don't know how to get, what do I do with this overwhelming? You just stick it in the ChatGPT. It's like, summarize it for me, right? And learn how to speak to ChatGPT like a really bratty intern, right? I want you to think about like
You don't have to be nice.
You don't have to be
I've
nice.
already, Charlie, I've already been the sort of now. I've already been the quite demanding customer today, saying when I come in 2 weeks' time, I've already laid it out. This is where I want us to get in 2 hours.
No, this is great. No, and but what I'm saying is, in this meantime, like, find out more. Like, and it's amazing by even just sharing and informating everyone. Here are the questions that came in afterwards, and then here's the way I would have answered them. And you share that, whether it's to a large group or even individually. You will even over email, someone will say, can I throw like 2 more questions that just popped in my mind? And then the list grows. So you have version 1 of it, then you have version 2 of it,
Yep.
right? Then you have version 3. And by the time you meet next Tuesday, you might have like version 11, right? Like, it's like, it's amazing how rapidly, and before you know it, more things will open up that you don't even know. That's the beauty of offense in the unknown. You can never possibly predict, right? The possibilities of things that open up. right? It's very cool.
Yeah, I feel like this is,
That's cool.
I feel like I just want to like,
Yeah.
well, I'll think about it too, because it's like a great case study in, number one, you took risk, right? Because you had to volunteer to do it and you could have been whatever, so.
See how,
And then how the FF and the VX
Right.
started working on it and you didn't blow the lead time. So you took risk,
Mhm.
you didn't blow the lead time on your mental prep, like your
Mhm.
psychology prep, the
Yep.
preparation, not the actual presentation.
Mhm.
You didn't blow time on that. So you worked on your FF, you worked on the VX, right? And then, yeah, so I feel that and then what was the last piece? Sorry, I can't think what I was just thinking. But I feel that's a great lesson in risk taking, the mental prep as not blowing the lead time. Yeah, and then you killed it. Like, and even the Q&A being an example of when you're on fire, when it's yours and you're on fire and you love the work you're doing. And even if somebody gave you a criticism, you would have been able to like think about it probably live, and because it's like, it's yours. You're not forcing it into somebody else's thing or trying to look a certain way or be a
and
certain
the other
way.
part is this, at some point, and this is one of the things that takes more reps fully to get there, you start to understand putting mission first. Like, people make an impact, meaning you start to care less about being the author of all the answers.
Mhm.
You care about getting the right answer, best answer. And so like, and Richard, if you get some of these things, you're like, oh, I think I answered this best, or I don't know this one, send it to us too. If we get time, like while walking up to lunch, I'll give you my visceral thoughts, and it's like, just compile, right?
Yeah,
It's not
Yeah.
even just like, why not?
yeah.
I'll send you guys give me half an hour. I'll send you the email through, and then you can, in slow time, look at the questions that have come in so far.
Give me 10 minutes, I'll give it to
there
you.
you
Yeah, it's awesome. Richard, thank you. I love
That's
it.
so good. Congrats, Richard. That's
It's very cool.
fantastic.
I love it.
No,
Great.
no, lit 219, Mike and Greg. There you go.
I love it.
It's awesome. Mike and Greg, that's so cool. I love it, Greg, but look how proud CK and Emma feel. We're so proud.
Maybe how proud Greg feels.
Well,
of
Greg
Greg and
feels
Mike.
proud too. Yeah,
right?
Mike, yeah,
Um,
awesome. What a cool
Are there
example.
any other questions, thoughts? I can go to any of the slides.
So
I did not read the chat at all, so I do not know what's even in
Greg
there.
had one, but I don't see him anymore.
Let's see. I see Greg. Oh, they're doing the whole mic setup.
Oh, Mike's got the wife beater on, so it's
Yes.
like,
Oh, yeah.
workout time.
Oh, yeah, no. Let's go.
Anybody on the screen, do you guys have any questions before we go? Terry does. Go ahead, Terry. No? No, you put your hand up, okay.
I see Greg and Mike unmuted, I think.
Oh, she's saying goodbye, okay.
Could you guys hear me?
I heard
Kind
someone's
of.
voice.
Steve?
Was that Steve? Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead, Steve.
So not the same question Greg had, but I when you were getting into the fear and then how and versus the greed, it resonated a lot with me. And I guess a question I had about it is the awareness, because the fear I think will, when you have high fear, high stress, it increases. You have to be aware of what's going on. And then I feel like the greedy part that comes out of it, like for yourself, you almost feel ashamed of it, maybe because the fear side. So I'm trying to formulate my question the right way, but I guess it's like, how much do you want to, like, if you're aware of it happening, but then you think of the greed, how much is that manipulated by the fear? And it might be like distorted based off of the stress you have going on.
Sorry,
Give me an example.
No, Steve.
I can give more context. Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, my wife got laid off. So
Okay.
there's like, that's high fear, right? Health insurance, all of that going on. So it's like, resonating in my head.
Okay.
You guys have a good idea of what Mike and I are working on. So then that kind of goes into, the greed part. You push it down because you're like, oh man, I got to make sure, this is taken care of, like all this stuff going on. But then you think about mission. So I guess it's I feel like it's manipulated by the fear, the greed.
I don't know if I use the word manipulated, because I feel
No,
like.
you didn't. I'm just saying that. I'm saying that.
Yeah, and this is where, once again, your choice of words and all that stuff kind of usually are the clues to what's going on in your head. There's a slide that, so this slide. You guys remember this slide, right? We call it the PP. But it's actually the everyday side. It's a great way to start every day. It's how I start every day. The first part I go into is truth, right? And so, for example, your wife got laid off. I don't know situationally what it is in terms of her skills of finding another job. And you have to be realistic about it, right? But also your financial details and whatnot, like, and it doesn't mean you have to do a massive audit, but like the avoidance of truth is the
Yeah.
beginning of how everything goes wrong, right? Like I have to focus on winning. I have to focus on coding or
Yeah.
selling, right? And I'm like, do you know everyone just said no to you? Like, do you know how bad you've been? Like, do you like we avoid truth, and our belief is that we're too fragile,
Yeah.
right? It would put me in a spiraling negative mood, so we avoid truth. And that avoidance of truth means everything afterwards is built on, if you want to actually use the words, on non-truth
Right.
or truth missing, right?
Mhm.
Every judgment and decision is going to be incorrect if you don't have truth. So the morning routine that we shared, and this is Lib 201, right, was inject truth in, and it's shocking how fast you can inject it, right? And then the toughness, doing a physical PP, right? And I know I'm not a physical trainer, not as fit as you guys, but like this idea, PP stands for plank and push-up. Done in a specific order on purpose to elevate even the level of toughness by the time you do push-up, but the plank is calmer and it's tough. You're physically putting in effort while thinking and narrating a fighter mindset. But a lot of people, if you only do that, you will go wreak damage. So you got to calm down, which when you shower, it naturally does. Now, if you're like, well, I do cold showers, well, you're going to probably just do tough and then another tough one. So the warm, hot shower will calm you down as you're thinking of how to go rip heads, right? Or do whatever aggression. You'll be calm while doing it. And it's a physical thing that will calm you down. And then as you've done truth, tough, calm, as you're kind of getting ready to go in and actually do this stuff, right? Which might be even while on your phone or do something, right? Say something, email something, or like by the time you come in, you have to try to find playfulness. If you do not find playfulness, you generally do not have agility. If you do not find playfulness, you have narrated performance anxiety. If you cannot find playfulness, when something goes wrong, you are a miserable human being to be around, and that person you hurt most is yourself, right? Like it's like as if the world was born again to just slight you today, right? Like the world woke up and said, how do I hurt, Dana's day today or Kathy's day, which is so not true. You're waking up and just overreacting to the norm of the world. There's an article that we shared from last week. It was all around anxiety. You get all calm, right? You meditate, you get calm. The minute you step out and you bump into any human being, anything, just life, anxiety just shoots right back up. And so this is where the sequence of truth, tough, calm, playfulness is actually to get you ready for the day. So we, in short, call it the PP. But when you're trying to figure out what to do, which is where, I've heard the term visceral drafting be overused, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're drafting, but I'm gonna guess it's very wrong. Generally speaking, like the everyday basis, you're trying to always do something hard first. Like in this case, and let's see, I'm gonna go to the details since you're on the more advanced coach side. Plan A, plan Z, right? Plan A is your wife's gonna get a job and you're thinking of how to help her get a job, right? Plan Z is she will never get a job, right? And it might be long enough that it's the same as never. So you have to find a way to actually make it work, whether it's expenses or increased income from you to support the whole thing, right? These are two polar opposite extremes. Let's start drafting, right? What does that version look like? What are the things that you have to do, right? And now remember, if you've done your, like at the bottom of the page, you're like, oh, you know what? She keeps calling me. Okay, I'm gonna park that, right? Like Mike Collette today had another bad day, decided to put it all on me. I'm gonna park that one. Or like, my knee is throbbing and like, oh my God, like I'm gonna park that one. And you can actually park those at the bottom of the page and focus on drafting, right? A plan A version, a plan Z version. And then you get stuck and then you're like, oh, I'm gonna pick something easier. Like, we need to actually host a annual party for a prototype. Maybe I'll try to put my mind into that really quick. Oh, that's a lot easier than trying to figure out this whole plan A and Z for our future income of the family. And then as soon as you feel some progress and Mike says, wow, Steve, great job. You're like, oh, I feel like I'm fire. I'm going back to my hard project. That's how it's done. I don't know. See if that's too much detail. Did I help? Did I make
No,
it
that's
worse?
good. I haven't thought about doing the A and the Z for the visceral draft.
So
You
when
do
you
that.
say like, am I manipulating, I'm ashamed of, I have like that's called mental chatter. Like, let's
Yes.
park that one
Yeah,
too,
park that
right?
way.
Because like, can we stop talking about your different like feelings of ashamed and this and that? I'm like, just, hey,
You're like, stop, the truth is.
you got a
that
real,
this is
real serious
yeah,
mission to go solve, right?
Right.
Like, that stuff you can do in the post game. Or like, so like,
Once you get a
you gotta
plan.
go to battle, so you need
Yeah.
to plan fast, right? So like, you can go and lick your wounds and talk about how you feel like an inferior human being and a man and a husband, all that stuff. Do that later, not right now, right? Park it, right? Put like, Steve feels ashamed, boom, at the bottom of the box. And why you park it, write it down is that unless you want to keep writing the same thing over and over again, you parked it so you can visually see it, right? Like that thought doesn't deserve more than one box at the bottom of the page. Now, some of you love to use highlighters and like to highlight it once if it comes back to my head. And if it comes back in, I highlight it again. But since I'm not quite sure if I highlight it, I'm gonna use a different color to strengthen it and strengthen it and strengthen it. I'm like, that's how you're doing that, right?
It's so interesting, Charlie, because like what you're saying is, not to overuse like the language of like crisis versus not, but like when the mission is, like when there's a tough mission ahead of you, that's what we were talking last night about the pre-game and post-game. It's why we brought in this older lip to bring in like pre and post-game. Pre and post-game, you can go into how did this happen to me? You know, all the mental chatter that just kind of like, how did I get here in my life? Are there decisions that you made? It's like the worst time to do that stuff, right? And then you have to know, like I do that. That's like one of my, it's like something bad happens and then, you know, it's like the pylon. Okay, why did I choose to move here, live here, this, whatever? You could just go into like a life and then before you know it, it's like, yeah, but you have a real mission to go figure out. And like, you're no more well equipped to be able to do that because you just put yourself into an even worse headspace. It's like, why do we do that? Like, it's actually making it worse. Like, it does nothing good. It's saying, and then even just knowing it's so silly, knowing later, once I get through this, I can go think about that. Like, you know, when I get to another, it's almost like when I get to a certain plateau in my life or a certain situation where it's like appropriate time to do that, then I get to do that. But it's like, I don't get to do that right now because I have a serious man up kind of like adulting thing I have to figure out. So I can't waste my energy doing that. Like, this is the wrong time to do that. Like, and how you narrate, it's like inappropriate to do that now. Like this overcorrection we've been talking about, like when you're doing it, not to be like, oh, I'm being hard on myself. I should be able to have some time to do it or what. No, you have to be like, it's inappropriate right now to do that, right? Like that's me, you know, sucking as a, what's that?
I was like, that's also a story that you tell yourself.
That it's okay to do this. I should be able to do this. I should have time to do
Yeah,
this.
I was just thinking around the idea of the parking it, where like, especially when I'm so like high up
Yeah.
on emotions, like parking it just. But the idea of parking it is also a story I need to be able to tell myself.
Right, it's a
like,
story. Yeah, it's a story to say,
Not
I
right
need to
now.
park this, not right now. I'm in the game, not right now. And even like actually it just reminded me years ago, we were coaching, we were in like our temporary space before we moved in here. We're doing our leadership think tank and Shauna, the Air Force, right, enlisted, she brought something up that totally put me in my head on something for Brendan, because Brendan was in the process of like, you know, pretty much getting kicked out of school because he wasn't cutting the mustard at this private school. I mean, I went through years of just like torment on it, and it kind of triggered that thought, and it just took me out for the rest of the session. But I remember afterwards, Charlie was like, at that moment, you should put it on a fucking Post-it note, and then and have a spot in the office, which is I'm going to put that thought up there for later, because right now I'm in the game, I'm coaching people. I can't, but I narrated, you know, this is hard for me. Like I kind of went into like my weepy, excusey, victim-y, must be nice. They don't have to deal with it. I do. I don't know. Just whatever narratives I sort of went through was, I have a right to do this right now. I'm checked out. Like I just got bumped, right? But it's like in that moment, I didn't have like anyways, I just remember that as an example of a skill. Like in the moment, in the game, put it on a Post-it note. I'll think about that later. You know, like
I was trying to find a slide, you know, this idea that, you know, in the moment, like the past stuff, whatever, like happened, right? And you're here. And remember the whole thing about to be able to say to yourself, okay, sorry, that's closed for now, right? Your ability to go and reflect and think of the wrong path that happened that led to this, like that microphone is shut off, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's closed.
Mute.
You need to focus on the choices in front of you right now and figure out every second that goes by, you can actually miss your chance of creating options and choices for you.
Right.
And,
Right.
but remember, then there are the people out there and saying, that's why I never think of the past. And I just kind of ignore the truth. And that's why I was like, yeah, but that's why people run away from you, because you sound like delusionally incompetent, right? Like, do you not know the job market is not as easy? Like, do you not know, like, as opposed to the, oh, you're great, it always work out, you'll always find a job. I'm like, that's not what happens. Meaning like,
Yeah.
there's a part where, like, once again, use the language you want, right? And usually you'll see the language in your inner head is much stronger than what we say outwardly, because outwardly we are being monitored for our politically correctness and everything else. But like Kathy, in your case, I'd say not now, bitch, right? Literally, not now, bitch, right? Like, I have something in game happening right now, so not now, bitch. Like, I will come back to you, right? You get a ticket, and that ticket can be cashed in
Yeah, I think
for a
that's a
reflection,
good-
but
yeah,
not now, bitch.
Not now.
Right? Like, and then if they say, but you have to hear this, I'm like, right, give
Yeah.
it to me right now, I'm gonna write it down, right?
Mhm,
That's
mhm,
enough, not
mhm.
like, and they wanna elaborate, add more, and they start doing the, like, and shame, that, like, do you wanna hear the story of how I got here? And I'm like, no, not now, bitch, right? Like, if I need to know about the problem, hey, I wanna know the info ASAP, right? That's what I wanna know. So it helps my essay, right, my situational awareness. But when it comes to you telling me why it happened and the victim and I don't know, and like, it's not my fault that someone told me this, I'm like, once again, I need something I need to know now, you tell me, right? If not now, bitch, right? Because game is going on, right? And I need to drive. My hands are on the wheel, right? And I feel that is something that, once again,
Yeah, hands are on the
some of
wheel,
you may
that's
not
okay.
like the language, but it's just kind of internal talk. Some of you have different talks. Some of you might call it something else, right? People have different names for the bad version of you versus the good version, right? And sometimes it's just a temporary name, right? That you need just to help you,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
talk to your own brain objectively, because that is not what you need in the middle of the game. Mental chatter in the middle of the game actually exists, always exists. But the ability to get a microphone, the ability to grow it, the ability to say, okay, it's my turn to actually do a little dance recital right now in front of you, that is in your control. And if you do not seem to be able to control it repeatedly, that means you're not talking to it the right way. You're being too gentle. It's like, excuse me? Excuse me?
It's like the devil and the angel. It's like saying to the devil, excuse me, could you get off my shoulder right now versus,
Excuse me? Right now,
Yeah.
I feel this is not the best thing for me.
I love that, excuse me.
Um,
It's so true.
like-
It's like, excuse me, I don't think this
And
is
then
good for me right
it-
now.
It's almost like you have a hand raised and like, what do you want to say? Well, can I say a few words? I don't think this is the best thing for me right now. I think. It's like,
Yeah, it's just gonna get drowned out by all the other forces that are.
it's
yeah,
more like,
not
hey,
even
I
close
need
to
info I need to hear. Tell me right now. Right effing now. If not now, bitch, right?
Yeah,
I gotta go. Like,
I gotta get.
cars
started.
driving,
Yeah.
lives are at stake, right?
Yeah,
My life especially. Like, there's a part, you need to learn how to do that. And it's a lot of people say, okay, I'll learn how to do that in my head, right? Well, the problem in your head is you don't know what the hell's going on in that crazy play you're generating in your head, right? The excuse me is like really strong.
It's so good.
And
It's exactly
the-
what happens. It's
right?
not strong enough. It's like
no,
not even
and then
close.
the fear and frustration is like, you know what? Like, my God, like there's so much wood here, it's just all burning by itself, right? And someone's like, oh, I love bubbles. It's just you can't help it. And then you're like, oh, I'm gonna say words like, not now, bitch, in my head, and that's gonna work. And I'm like, by your tone, it doesn't. And so until you expose it,
Yeah.
you don't know what play is going on, and that play just takes control. And before you know it, you're like thinking you did all the right things. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, by like I said,
Oh, good.
your tone and then your action, which usually is freezing, right? And then acting forgetful, missing details. I'm like, I feel like I know what play is going on, which is the same play that you've been, theater doing in your head. And it seems to be like a Les Miserables, just, right? Everything's just bad. Anyways, I digress. But I hope that helps, Steve.
Yeah.
If not, next week Academy, you will come back with the firepower to come home and saying, you know what? I mean, you're not gonna say, excuse me, bitch. You're gonna say, hey,
I love
wifey,
you,
I love you, wifey.
I love you.
I got this figured out. They should say, oh my God, you're trying to be positive. I'm like, no, no, no. You want me to show you the negative? I wrote it down. It should be like, oh God, that's so negative. We're like, but focus on the top of the page. Here's how I'm planning. And there's a sense of like, and after a certain level of truth, you know, tears, toughness, anger, whatever, might even join in and be like, I got some ideas that's giving me, then it just starts going into things that you could do. It's amazing, right? Don't sell the sauna yet, but there's other options out there. Okay. We
Right.
will see, actually, next week, we don't have
Oh, we won't-
Flip
we
because
won't see you,
we'll have Danny here. We will be teaching our academy while dealing with the AI panel and then an all-day argument between people in education about the future of AI in schools, assuming it's gonna be an argument, or it's gonna be extreme collegiality and politeness to result in
prediction.
virtually nothing. And then we'll do a giant hackathon. And then
will
hopefully the
result in
young
virtually
children
nothing.
will show what's possible as they scratch their heads and wonder, maybe we should learn from them. But no one could say that because then you won't get paid tuition. And then we'll reset our office and come back to normal on Monday. And you'll have
Thank
fun.
you for the, whatever that was, but like the foreshadowing of what's gonna happen is so true. I love it. Probably
Yes.
nothing. Maybe
Um,
we reset our home office
yeah.
after they
And then,
ruin it.
Richard, I look forward to your questions and when I read it, I
So
will
cool.
just give you my response back as soon as viscerally I do.
That was
Um,
a bunch of serotonin you just threw at
Yeah.
us. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Very cool.
I love
Very
stories like
cool.
that.
Very cool.
Okay?
All
See you
right, you guys, we'll see you.
Enjoy the
Yeah.
week,
Yeah.
right? And enjoy the rest of January, it's
Enjoy the
still
rest of
there.
January,
right?
right, Brian? Yeah.
Some of you have
True
one
in
day,
practice today. I
some
like
of you
that.
have no day and some of you have two.
left.
5 meals left. yeah,
5 meals left. Depends how many meals you eat a day. I like to think I'm on 8 left
All
for January. Okay?
right, thanks, you guys. We'll see you.